All right, today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most important tools on the web, Express.js. You might not have heard of it, but I guarantee you've used websites and apps powered by it, probably even today. So what is this invisible engine, and what makes it so dang essential? Let's dive in.
So, have you ever really thought about it? What does it actually take to build a web server from the ground up? How does a server even listen for a request from your browser, figure out what you want, and know exactly what to send back? Turns out it's kinda complicated, and that's the core problem we're going to solve today.
And that, right there, is where Express.js comes into the picture. Here's a good way to think about it. If Node.js gives you the raw engine and all the car parts, Express gives you a pre-assembled chassis, a powerful toolkit, and a really clear instruction manual. It's not a replacement for Node.js. It's more like a supercharger for it. A thin but incredibly powerful layer that just makes your life so much easier.
To really get why Express is such a big deal, we first need to understand the job it was built for. So let's break down the fundamental checklist that every single web server has to tick off.
Okay, so basically any web server has got to do three main things. First, it has to speak the language of the web, HTTP, to handle connections. Second, it needs to act like a traffic cop, a process we call routing, to send a request for, say, your /about page to a totally different place than a request for /contact. And third, it has to actually process those requests, which often involves a bunch of steps, like checking if you're logged in, parsing some data, or just logging what happened.
So, faced with that checklist, how does Express come to the rescue? Well, it provides this incredibly elegant and simple toolkit that tackles every single one of those items. Let's see how it does it.
And when I say simple, I really mean it. Just look at this one line of code. That's it. That's all it takes to get an Express application up and running. You bring in the library, you call it, and boom, your server, your app is officially born.
Okay, this slide right here really says it all. This is the why. On the one hand, with plain old Node.js, you're stuck manually digging through URLs and writing headers. It's just a lot of code. But then you look at the Express way. That code is practically plain English. It just says, hey, app, when you get a request for the homepage, just send back hello world. It's cleaner, it's way more readable, and it saves you a ton of time.
What's so cool is that Express makes this whole routing thing super intuitive by just mapping its functions directly to what you're trying to do. You use app.get when someone wants to get data. You use app.post when they submit a form. App.put for updates, app.delete for, well, deleting things. This structure makes it crystal clear what your code is supposed to do, right from the get-go.
But what about pages that aren't static? Like a profile page that needs to work for thousands of different users. Well, Express handles this beautifully with something called route parameters. See that little colon in front of user ID? That's a signal to Express. It says, hey, whatever someone types in the URL after /user, treat it like a variable. And just like that, it captures that value for you.
So how do we actually use that user ID from the last slide? Well, Express neatly packages up everything coming from the user into a tidy little request object. That user ID we just talked about, it lives inside request.params. If the URL had a question mark with extra info, you'd find that in request.query. And if a user filled out a form, all that data would be waiting for you in request.body. It's your complete toolkit for understanding what the user wants.
And on the flip side, of course, you have the response object. This is your control panel for talking back. You can send a simple message, you can set a specific status code, like a 404 for not found, or you can send back nicely structured data using JSON. You have total control over the reply.
Okay, routing is cool, it's fundamental. But what truly makes Express so unbelievably powerful and flexible is a concept called middleware. This, right here, is the secret sauce. It's what lets you customize and stretch your application in pretty much any way you can dream up.
So what on earth is middleware? At its heart, middleware is really just a function. But it's a special kind of function that sits right in the middle, between the user's request coming in and your final response going out. It gets to look at the request, maybe make some changes, run some code, or even stop the whole process dead in its tracks if something isn't right.
I like to think of it like an assembly line. A request comes in, and first it hits a logger, which just writes down what was asked for. Then it gets passed to an authentication function, which checks, hey, is this user logged in? If they are, it moves on, maybe to a JSON parser that gets incoming data ready. And only after passing through all these checkpoints does it finally get to the route handler it was meant for.
So how does it move from one step to the next on that assembly line? It all comes down to this one little command, next. Every single middleware function has a choice. It can either end the request right there and send a response, or it can call next and pass the torch to the next function in the chain. It's this simple little key that keeps the whole line moving. And this pattern is used for everything. Need to log every request that comes in? That's middleware. Need to process incoming JSON data so you can actually use it? Yep, that's middleware. Checking if a user is logged in, compressing your files, even just serving up basic stuff like images and CSS, it's all handled beautifully through this middleware system.
All right, theory time is over. We've covered the core ideas: routing, the request and response objects, and that all-powerful middleware. Now let's see how all these pieces click together to build a real working server.
I mean, just look at how ridiculously simple this can be. With just a couple lines of code, you can use Express's built-in static middleware, point it at a folder full of your website files, and that's it. Express automatically turns into this powerful engine that serves up all your HTML, CSS, and images. A complete, working web server in 3 lines.
But what if you want your homepage to do something special? No problem. You just add a specific route handler for it. And this is where Express is so smart. When a request for your homepage comes in, it'll check for your specific handler first. If it doesn't find one, only then will it fall back to the static file server. This gives you incredibly fine-grained control.
And here's a super realistic example of what you'd build for an API. A request comes in for a user with a specific ID. Your code grabs that ID, looks for them in a database. If you find the user, you send back a success code and the user's data. If not, you send back a not found error. This clear, simple logic is the absolute bread and butter of building modern APIs with Express.
It's this killer combo of simplicity and power that has made Express the undisputed king of the hill. So just how popular is it? Well, according to a 2023 Stack Overflow survey, an absolutely staggering 85.3% of professional Node.js developers use Express. It is, without a doubt, the industry standard.
When you boil it all down, it comes down to a few key reasons. Express just wins. It's minimalist, so it gets out of your way. It's ridiculously flexible because of middleware. It's lightning fast, adding almost no overhead. And it's proven. It's been the standard for years, backed by a huge active community.
So, at the end of the day, Express gives you this solid, no-nonsense foundation for building things on the web. It handles all the complicated, messy server stuff, freeing you up to focus on what makes your application unique. The only real question left is, what are you going to build with it?